Well, let's continue the conversation about better communication between you and someone that you care about. Hey friends, how's it going? Currently it's super smoky where I'm at. I go outside and you can smell the smoke, and you can kind of see the haze. And so I'm thinking, should I even be outside breathing this? Or should I be like crawling on the ground so the smoke stays above me? That'd look kind of weird crawling around. But anyways, I'll get those like deep mysteries of life figured out. But let's talk about communication. So this is part 2. So I'm not a super focused detail type guy. And so usually when you see lists, they're split into like, if there's 8, it's 4 and 4, or 10, it's 5 and 5. And so in this list, I realized after I made my first video that I did not split them up evenly. And who cares? Because it's still giving you good information about how to fight. So I want you to be aware that I know that about myself. And I regularly tell people that. See, look at my pockets. This one's buttoned, this one's not buttoned. And so now I will button my pocket. Now I look even to everyone that was really struggling with the evenness. Both pockets are now buttoned. So let's talk about, what we talked about last time was knowing what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, discuss one issue at a time, and no degrading language. So let's get to the rest of them today. So one of the things that I think people, I know they don't hate me, but they get annoyed, I think, with me when I say it because I say it so often, is that do not use the phrase, you make me, whatever feeling it is. Because ultimately people can't make you feel something. Now they can say things that push up against trauma or unresolved trauma in your life, but ultimately people can't make you feel shy. They can't make you feel betrayed. Now you may have something in your past that really impacted you negatively and you never resolved that, and so you become an adult, and so then your partner says something to you that reminds you of that unconsciously or consciously, and then these feelings rise up. And we immediately want to blame our partner for these feelings that come up. And what I would say is like we have to express our feelings with I words, not you made me, because it's super blaming. So when you feel something, that's when you say, I feel attacked, I feel betrayed, I feel happy, I feel joyful. The more you can own your feelings, the better in a conversation, because the moment you start saying, you make me this, you make me feel whatever, it puts the other person on the defensive. And then when the other person's on the defensive, then there's usually no great way to resolve issues. So take ownership for your words. Take turns talking. This is something that a lot of people struggle with. It takes a bit of self-control. And if you think, there's 2 things I would suggest. If you think that I need to say something, I'm not going to be able to get it out, take notes. Keep a notepad. Keep your cell phone. Take some notes. So you remember what you want to say. The second thing is set a timer for yourself. If you find that one half of your partnership is talking a lot and you don't feel like you can get words in, one of the things I suggest to people is set a timer. So set a timer for 1 minute. And when that minute is up, even if you're in mid-sentence, you got to stop. Even if you have 20 seconds left, that's your time to talk. Okay? So it's very black and white. So if you have a timer, it's very black and white. Set it for 1, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is you think you and your partner can agree to. Try to implement that. A big one that I see couples often do, and there's actually a book about it. It says it's one of the leading indicators of divorce, is stonewalling. Stonewalling is you and your partner are like arguing about something back and forth, and one of you just says, I'm done, that's it, I'm not going to talk about this anymore. And you stay there and you just become tight-lipped, or you walk away, and then you don't have any more conversation about it. The problem with that is that then that's another issue that just doesn't get resolved, and you're letting the other person know that you have no more interest in what they have to say about a thing that maybe is really hurtful to them. So stop stonewalling if you're stonewalling. No yelling. Again, that's something that we often learn from our families of origin. A lot of times, whoever's the loudest is going to win, right? So maybe you had a dad or a mom that was like really loud, and you just kind of cowered because you're just a little kid, or you didn't like that yelling and screaming, and so you just kind of stuffed it, right? And so think about what happens when you take that into an adult relationship that you're trying to manage, and you either become a stuffer and you don't address things, or you become a yeller yourself because you learned in your childhood that seemed to work. So don't be yelling at one another. Two more, take a time out when things get heated. This is much different than stonewalling. Taking a time out is telling your significant other, hey, I'm starting to kind of get overwhelmed and I need to take a break. And so what that means is you don't take a break for 5 days. You take a break for an hour, maybe max 3 hours, with the intent of coming back to have a more reasoned discussion. A lot of times, I know for me personally, like early on in my marriage, my wife and I would get into arguments, and I would sometimes feel like I'm backed into a corner, and then I would just say dumb things. And so we have this understanding, and we usually follow it if we get into a disagreement, where if I can get some space for myself, I'll know that my wife is usually right, because that's just the way it is. My wife's a great person and she has a good head on her shoulders, and I tend to be a verbal processor. So I'll say things that are just dumb, or I'll say things that I don't mean. And if I can get space to kind of think through things, I'm willing to come back and be more, I'm willing to be more reconcilable. I don't know if that's a word, but hopefully you get what I mean. And lastly, the goal in arguments is to have a resolution. Now, resolution in my mind means two people giving up something that they're okay with giving up to come to a solution about whatever the issue is. That's super hard to do. The next best thing is a compromise. A compromise is two people giving up something. They don't want to necessarily give it up, but they're willing to for the sake of the relationship. They're willing to keep the relationship whole and keep the relationship moving forward. And so if you can't come to a resolution on something, at least come to a compromise, because if you can't come to a compromise, then this issue is what's going to, whatever the issue is just going to keep coming up and up and up again. And compromises and resolutions are hard to do by yourselves usually. And that's why people like me exist, or mediators exist. Lawyers exist also, but they're super expensive and kind of adversarial. So if you have an issue that keeps coming up, that you just are thinking, okay, we're not able to compromise or resolve this, going to a third party is usually helpful to give you some different perspective, or maybe help you see some blind spots that you haven't seen. So hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully if it's overwhelming to you, just take 2 of these things and start small with them. It's a list of, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think it's a list of 8 things. And so what I would say is, like, take 2 of those 8 things and really try to work on those 8 things. We're talking baby steps here. Because if you can get 2 things, right, if you can stop yelling and stop name calling, then you can stop stonewalling and ask for breaks. And then you can just expand out from there. But get really good at 2 things if you feel overwhelmed with the things that I've said. And you get good at 2 things, and you try one more thing. And then you can try another thing. And then before you know it, you're good at all of them. I think a lot of times when I give my list to people, or to couples in particular that are fighting, they look at it and they think, oh, these are all great things, but then they don't implement them in their lives because it's just too much, or their partner isn't doing it. And this leads to a whole nother conversation that we'll have about emotional intelligence. But this is already too long. Some of you have probably already clicked off. So, hey, I want to thank you for listening. I hope you have a great weekend. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to comment below, or message me at headshrinkinc@gmail.com. Take care. Have a great weekend.